Recently, the US Navy patented a series of unusual inventions that really resemble things out of UFO lore. So if you look on the screen, you will see, I think, the most well-known patent, which is essentially a triangular flying device that utilizes a kind of anti-gravity, and it's called TR-3B. At least this is what it's known as in popular UFO culture, UFO lore. This device is not named the TR-3B, but it literally is one when you look at it. For many years, for decades really, people have reported seeing these triangular craft overhead in the skies as part of kind of UFO lore, and there's also been insiders who have come out and spoken about this craft that is basically in production and has been used by the elite branches of the US military for actually a very long time. Now, this is interesting to me because I saw a TR-3B in 1997 when I was a kid in Arizona during this famous UFO flap that happened around late winter or early spring of that year. So the Navy surprised everybody in the kind of UFO disclosure world by actually releasing patents to what could be best described as UFO technology. And when you read the patent itself, I was originally going to make a video just looking into the patent, but it's very complicated stuff, but it hinges on next level physics, next level propulsion, things that would, well, for one thing, it would explain the propulsion systems we see in craft that seemingly defy physics, like this whole UAP thing we hear about on the news of these UFOs. They're now called UAPs that Air Force people have cited and caught on video doing maneuvers which are beyond our realm of physics. And to kind of summarize how these triangular craft operate, it's almost like it basically creates gravity. It creates a gravitational field. And once you can do that, you can pretty much manipulate the forces of nature into however it is you want to manipulate it. So if you want to suddenly, take a right angle turn and go 100 knots, you can do that. Or if you want to go underwater and have just as much velocity as when you go when you surface, as also when you go into space, you can pretty much do whatever you want if you have a system that produces gravity. Now, I'm probably not doing a good job of summarizing the physics behind this. The patent is available. It's on the US Navy website. So they're actually patenting this material. And those of us following the kind of UFO disclosure initiatives we see happening, it's very clear to us that this is an attempt to sort of get the foot in the door, the proverbial door, before there's complete disclosures happening in the coming years, so that somebody else doesn't patent this stuff first, so that the Navy and the powers that be get a legal foothold on this technology before it's released to the public. But who patented this stuff? Who is the greatest scientist in history who was able to quote invent this material? Well, this patent and others like it credited to a guy named Salvatore Pais. Now, some people on the internet, analysts, have theorized that maybe Pais isn't a real person, because the name Salvatore Pais is translated to savior of the world. I think it was David Wilcock who pointed this out. So somebody named the savior of the world came out with this advanced, basically UFO technology, and works for the government, for the Department of Navy. And nobody knows who he is. Nobody could find real information about him besides one alleged photograph. Well, that's changed, because now a magazine has secured kind of a short interview with Salvatore Pais, who defends his work against critics and makes a very interesting statement about this technology. Before we go further, you're watching Afterlife Topics in Metaphysics. So we talk about metaphysical issues here. We usually talk about other dimensions and life after death, sometimes the ET subject, a lot of this crazy stuff that we tackle from a hopefully pretty rational angle. So if you like these topics, I encourage you to go down and hit the subscribe button, the like button, share the video if you think other people may find it interesting, or consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/afterlife topics to help keep this whole thing going so I can keep making videos and managing the group and working on projects and still be able to do things like eat, which is, I guess, something you have to do in this world. So to continue, so the mysterious inventor of the Navy UFO technology, Salvatore Pais, recently came out into the open for the website or web magazine thedrive.com. And this article is titled The Secretive Inventor of the Navy's Bizarre UFO Patents Finally Talks. And it is true. They are, if you're not familiar with this world, which has heaps of evidence concerning these subjects already existing, of these patents being real and currently operational. And by the way, the patent you just saw for the triangular craft is operational. That is to say, the status of the patent is, I forget what the terminology was, but it was something like the patent is like in production or it's in use. Basically, it's a status that is reserved for things that are like based under some kind of development. But don't quote me on that. I'd have to look up to get some more information about that. This is what I heard. I've looked at the patent myself, and it's a lot to try to digest. Other people are experts in this and can probably give better information than I can. But it's not just a goofball patent. It's not just like there's not like a ton of patents on the Navy website just throwing stuff against the wall and being like, let's patent, riding on robotic unicorns to the moon. They don't have a history of just like doing nonsense. So it's an operational patent. And it would be bizarre for normies. So here we have a picture of Salvatore Pais, Dr. Salvatore Pais. And So the article begins about how the war zone has been deeply reporting on a set of bizarre patents assigned to the U.S. Navy. The patents, which are all the product of a single inventor, truly sound like the stuff of science fiction, include high-temperature superconductors, gravitational wave generators, which I just talked about, compact fusion reactors, and high-energy electromagnetic field generators. Most radical of all is the hybrid aerospace underwater craft, claimed to be able to engineer the fabric of our reality at the most fundamental level by seemingly bending the laws of physics as we know them. Together, these patents seem to be the building blocks of a vehicle with truly out-of-this-world UFO-like performance. So now, of course, since this stuff hit the news with Dr. Pais here, the kind of critics and shills and skeptics, capital S skeptics, came out of the woodwork to attack this work. So you have to be living under a rock not to know about the whole UAP soft disclosure phenomenon. So we have these now at this point officially documented, so the Navy officially recognizes that there are unidentified things being caught by Air Force pilots, the actual military service people who are not prone to lying or making things up, and it's on video. And the Navy acknowledges that they don't know what it is. I'd wager they do know what it is, but this is the soft disclosure that they're doing. This is the timeline that we're on currently. And you'd have to be living under a rock because this stuff has been on the news constantly. But still, the skeptics, they want to come out of the woodwork to say that it's all a bunch of nonsense and this guy is crazy and the Navy lost their mind, while ignoring the fact that there are aircraft in the sky observable right now that are demonstrating these new laws. I shouldn't say new laws of physics, I mean new discoveries upon the existing laws of physics, allowing a broader range of what aircraft are able to do, which is what UFOs do. So I want to scroll down a little bit before we get to. So this is a little bit about Salvatore Pais's biography, and before we get to his statements about this technology, I want to look at what some of the critics were saying, because Pais basically is responding to these critics. So the Drive contacted a guy named Carl Willis, nuclear engineer and reactor supervisor at the University of New Mexico. So, I mean, just some mainstream science shill. And look, I mean, mainstream science has brought us a lot of technical innovation in this society today. I can't knock on people with nuclear engineering degrees, but I think it's extremely limited. And the people enshrouded in academia, I mean, it's classic inside the box thinking, isn't it? So they're trained their whole lives on rigid standards, as well as materialism, as well as denial of anything that goes outside of what's conventional. So no surprise, mainstream academics are frothing at the mouth about this. So according to Willis, Pais' most recent work represents a classic case of pathological science. I actually agree. There's definitely such a thing as pathological science. It's kind of a funny terminology. I think I'm going to use it, but it's being misapplied here. Willis says the literature for the plasma compression fusion device contains invented jargon, nonsensical statements, weak or absent evidence of an informed theoretical basis, an overabundance of nebulous adjectives and adverbs instead of meaningful quantities in technical writing, and lots of statements made in passing that seem to contradict basic and accepted physics. And this is where these guys, it's always the same kind of thing, that something that contradicts contradicts basic physics. There was a guy, I can't remember the name of who said this quote, but it's a famous quote. People laugh at it, and they teach it in school. Where I think it was the 1920s, there was a well-known scientist who said that we currently know everything there is to know about physics, and everything else from here on out is just like icing on the cake, basically, because we have reached the zenith, the apex of our understanding of physics. This was the 1920s. So this is just it's repeatable hubris. It's that same idea that we know everything there is to know. So if something comes out of left field, automatically you can reject it because we already know everything there is to know. And this is the problem with humans. For lack of a better term, this is why we're so stupid, and so it's so difficult for us to adapt to new things. Let's see. Willis continues, it's hard not to suspect he's either drinking the Kool-Aid himself or just chumming the waters for the kind of people who do. Willis notes that this case is mildly unusual in that the author has a PhD and is employed by the government, his patents are assigned to the government, and the paper is stated to appear in a rather widely read IEEE outlet. However, these facts in no way temper my view that this is all basically nonsense. It just raises additional questions about the cui bono of this particular case. So this is another really funny example of just the arrogance of these people, because somebody who has a position in a university is questioning the integrity and the knowledge of the State Department, the Department of Navy, Navy intelligence, military. So they are assuming that instead of recognizing that they may know something that he doesn't know, that this guy is just assuming that they're all crazy, they're all stupid, they're all foolish. And instead of looking at this at the big picture and seeing that there are aircraft in the sky right now that have been observed and identified and analyzed by the Navy, performing using this technology, instead of recognizing that, the response is, well, it's just a bunch of crazy talk. So very funny. So now let's get into the actual statements by Dr. Pais himself as he responds to the criticism. And there is something I wanted to mention which is very interesting, is that Pais's department at the Navy is the U.S. Navy Strategic Systems Programs Division, or the acronym is the SSP. And so he commonly refers to his work in the SSP. What is the SSP also an acronym for right now in popular kind of UFO investigations? I'm not going to reveal what it is. Those of you who follow this work, you know what SSP also stands for. So I'm just going to throw that out there. So let's go into Pais' response. So Pais says, and real quick, I want to preface this by saying, I don't think that Pais is the guy who invented all of this, but it's really funny because, and I say it because I mean, obviously this technology already exists and has been observed, I think, for decades in UAPs, quote UAPs, are really UFOs. But Dr. Pais, I think, is positioning himself to be this greatest scientist of all time. Because he uses a phrase that he invented in a kind of vain way called the Pais effect. So he's so confident that this is going to be the beginning of the new era, that he's already naming new concepts in physics after himself. Boy, it's got to be really exciting to have his job, because clearly he was elected specifically to be the front guy, basically, to maybe, like they need to create a genius scientist who, quote, invented all this technology to be able to reveal it to the public. And it looks like this Pais guy has taken on that role. It's really kind of funny. So let's read what Dr. Pais has to say to The Drive. The fact that my work on the design of a compact fusion reactor was accepted for publication in such a prestigious journal as IEEE-TPS should speak volumes as to its importance and credibility, and should eliminate, or at least alleviate, all misconceptions you or any other person may have in regard to the veracity or possibility of my advanced physics concepts. There you go. His advanced physics concepts. Mr. Tingley, do realize, and this is a response to the author or the journalist, I think, in response to criticism about these patents. Mr. Tingley, do realize that my work culminates in the enablement of the Pais effect, brackets, original physical concept. The Pais effect comprises the generation of extremely high electromagnetic energy fluxes, and hence high local energy densities, generated by controlled motion of electrically charged matter from solid to plasma states subjected to accelerated vibration and or accelerated spin via rapid acceleration transients. A bunch of gobbledygook for me. Such high energy EM radiation can locally interact with the vacuum energy state, or VES, the VES being the fifth state of matter, fifth essence, quintessence. In other words, the fundamental structure or foundational framework from which everything else, space-time included, in our quantum reality emerges. What? Now, I was reading the patent. Basically, he described the universe as being a plasma-based universe, and this was in the patent itself, which is something I've heard in the metaphysical and scientific metaphysical fields, and it also relates to life after death, which I talk about in this channel, higher dimensions, parallel lives, all that kind of stuff. That it could also roughly translate when people talk in a kind of new agey terms, like everything's made of light. Well, what that could also mean is everything's made of plasma, and it's an energy-based universe, and then the only thing missing here would be as energy interacting with consciousness, which gives rise to systems of matter as we perceive them to be. And this is straight up like spiritualist kind of stuff. So it is interesting how these things, start to merge together. The engineering of the Pais effect, it just makes me chuckle, can give rise to the enablement of macroscopic quantum coherence, which if you have closely been following my work, you understand the importance of. I must stress that all this work, patents, patent applications, and technical papers, was conducted as a NAVAR/NAWCAD employee, and that my current position with the Navy SSP, there you go, has absolutely no bearing or in any way, shape, or form has anything to do with this advanced physics work. Thank you for your interest in my physics concepts, and try to keep an open mind in regard to my work. Respectfully, Salvador Cesar Pais, PhD. So there you have it. As the article states, this email from Dr. Pais makes it clear that the inventor stands fully behind the science underlying these inventions, as radical as they sound. They talk a little bit about the Pais effect and the controlled motion of electrically charged matter from solid to plasma states subjected to accelerated vibration and or accelerated spin. So, as I mentioned, they're unable to find a single scientist or engineer who can corroborate a so-called Pais effect. So, take it from what you will. Could this be, huge stepping stone into partial disclosure, new paradigms of science, moving into an electric or plasma-based universe, physics model, or is it what these skeptic critics say, and it's a bunch of hysteria based upon like new age mumbo jumbo leaking into government organizations? I might even think that that's the case if it wasn't for the fact that there's been a massive UFO disclosure wave that's happened, and we can, the Navy admits that there's aircraft in the air that's basically using these concepts, and that alone means that this is real stuff. So it's people who don't want to take it seriously, their head is in the sand. But there you go. Dr. Salvador Pais, his name meaning the savior of the world, clearly maybe thinks he is. He's establishing new physics concepts, naming them after himself. Maybe that's a bit of an egotistical front. Maybe he will become the front man. Maybe he will become the great scientist of our era, who I think he does have a passion for this stuff, and he knows how to do this stuff, and he knows probably how to build these types of craft and such. Maybe, I think he probably really is a really gifted scientist, but let's face it though, I don't think he is the real inventor. Maybe he's the optimizer, the person to optimize this stuff for mass usage, which is also great. But I'm not so sure the inventors of this technology are necessarily terrestrial. We'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching. You can sign up to the Facebook group, or just join it, Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics on Facebook, afterlifetopics.com. You can grab books like Understanding Life After Death, The Afterlife, and Beyond. Or again, if you want to become a patron, you can join our classes behind the scenes for guest interviews, one-on-one consultation with myself concerning topics like where we go when we kick the bucket. And that's a big topic here on this channel. And thanks for watching, and I'll be sure to be posting any news on the disclosure movement and the UFO craziness that's been happening in our culture here on this channel. So be sure to subscribe. That's it for now. Talk to you later.